Revenge with Karen.
I knew something had rotted when the janitor, Frank, bless his arthritis-riddled knees, looked at me with pity. Frank doesn't do pity. He mops blood off bathroom walls like it's spilled Kool-Aid and once chased a drunk VP out of the server room with a Swiffer. But that Thursday, when I stayed late again crunching data that smelled like hot garbage and PR spin, Frank shuffled by, gave me a slow blink, and said, "They're gonna screw you, Karen. You smell too honest." Lexbridge Analytics used to stand for something. Back when I joined in 2011, we were a ragtag crew of data weirdos in an open-plan jungle of whiteboards and broken Keurigs. Our founder, Pete, wore wrinkled flannels and swore by integrity. "We don't sell truth," he used to say. "We reveal it." But Pete's gone now, transitioned into advisory legend after the board brought in new blood. And that blood came in a three-piece suit named Brent, who reeked of cologne, spreadsheets, and locker room ambition. He called himself the People Whisperer. I called him a haunted LinkedIn profile with teeth. I'd risen to director of People Analytics by then. Fancy title, same cubicle. 12 years, 5 restructures, 3 bad bosses, and 2 stress-induced ulcers. I stayed because I believed in the data, in the patterns, in how employee experience told a story, if you knew how to listen. But lately, that story had started lying to me. Our Q4 engagement survey results popped up on my dashboard that morning with a giant red lock icon and a single note: metrics locked for bonus eligibility. Locked. We never locked metrics. The entire point of quarterly surveys was to measure, not manipulate. And yet, here it was, sealed tighter than Brent's hairline secrets. Ran a quick compare against Q3 and noticed something foul. Scores that had been in the 60s were suddenly shining in the 90s. Negative feedback entries, gone. Flagged departments, glowing. Even Brenda's group in payroll, which nearly mutinied last quarter over forced overtime, now read highly satisfied. I don't care how many donuts you bring to a staff meeting. Brenda doesn't go from planning a walkout to giving 5 stars for work-life balance. That was the first crack. And look, if you've made it this far, and you've ever been the last one in the office, watching a Slack window blink in silence while your manager reposts #grindset memes from Cabo, then you get it. You've seen the rot set in under a veneer of glossy rebrands and employee appreciation weeks. Do me a favor, tap that subscribe button and give this story a like. It keeps us going. Hell, lets me keep telling the truth without fluffing it up like Brent's quarterly PowerPoints. All right, back to the dumpster fire. Brent didn't come through formal channels. He arrived via nepotism wormhole, an old frat brother of the CEO's son, fresh off a transformational journey at a failed HR startup. First thing he did was rename HR to People Ops. Then he launched Culture Calibrations, which is just corporate for gaslighting people into smiling more while being screwed. He wore loafers without socks and said things like vibe alignment without blinking. The man treated buzzwords like seasoning salt, dumped him everywhere. At first, I played nice. Sat through the vision meetings, nodded while he pitched Gamify Your Grind and Toxic Positivity scorecards. But when he asked if we could adjust the way detractors were weighted in the survey, just filter out the noise, I told him flatly, "No, data tells the truth, that's our job." He chuckled like I told a cute joke. Sure, just exploring options. But by that afternoon, I'd been removed from 2 cross-departmental meetings. My budget access got restructured, and someone tried to revoke my Tableau license. It was starting. I could feel it in the air, same way you feel static before a lightning strike. The building knew somehow. Elevators got slower. The coffee tasted like burnt toast and missed deadlines. Even the office plants looked nervous. And then came the follow-up email. Short, vague, CC'd to HR and the CFO, following up on our discussion Q4 alignment. Let's sync next week to finalize morale enhancement protocol. Morale enhancement protocol sounded like something out of a dystopian daycare. I forwarded it to my personal inbox, started quietly backing up my files. I'd been here too long, seen too much, to not recognize the scent of a setup. It smelled like toner ink, cucumber hand sanitizer, and fear. But I didn't panic. Not yet. Not when I still had access. Not when I still had everything. The walls were closing in, sure. But I'd built the maze, and I knew where the exits were. Brent called the meeting under the guise of Touchpoint Synergy. That's what he said in the invite. Quick one to align on engagement pulse Touchpoint Synergy. with 3 exclamation points and a calendar block that smelled like an ambush. I sat down across from him in conference room D, one of those sad, windowless tombs with a dusty fake ficus in the corner and a phone that never worked. He smiled like a salesman selling haunted timeshares. "Karen," he began, holding his hands like a motivational speaker trying to sell self-worth in bulk, "you've been here a long time. People look up to you. And I know change is hard, especially for legacy staff. Legacy staff. That's what they call you when they're prepping your replacement, but haven't finished the onboarding slideshow yet. I just wanted to chat about the Q4 engagement survey," he continued, clicking open a shared dashboard on his laptop. "Some of these numbers are, well, let's call them challenging optics. You know what I mean?" I didn't blink. "They're accurate." Sure, he nodded, sipping from his branded Lexbridge Hydro flask like he'd invented hydration. "But a few minor adjustments could go a long way. I mean, we're all aligned on the mission here. One team, one dream, right?" I looked at the screen. The red flags were obvious. Finance reported toxic leadership concerns. Marketing logged emotional exhaustion. And even IT, normally kept quiet unless someone unplugged a server, had flagged burnout due to unrealistic deadlines. Brent scrolled past it all and landed on the summary bar. "We're just asking for a bit of cleanup. Think of it like rounding up. Take out the outliers. Maybe soften some of the language. Eliminate the noise." I leaned back in the chair. "You want me to falsify the survey data?" His smile stayed frozen. The corners of his mouth twitched like a dying emoji. No, optimize the narrative. These results affect more than just morale. They tie into exec bonuses, external reporting, investor confidence. We just need green across the board. High satisfaction. Positive trend line, happy campers. That's not what the data says. "Well," he said, closing the laptop a bit too hard, "sometimes data needs context. And right now, the context is we're heading into a board review and federal audit cycle. Our biggest client is on edge. And this," he tapped the table, "is your chance to be a team player." There it was. The pitch under the pitch. Not a request, an order with glitter on it. I stared at him for a beat. I wanted to ask what kind of idiot thinks someone in people analytics wouldn't notice a 5-point jump in satisfaction during a quarter where the entire back office was running on fumes and vendor coffee. But I didn't. I just said no. He blinked, slow and calculating, then smiled again, tight and sharp, like he was chewing aluminum foil. "Noted." The meeting ended with no handshake, no follow-up notes. Just that look. I'd moved from legacy asset to cautionary tale. I walked straight to my desk, pulled up the survey history logs, and started downloading snapshots. The raw files, the metadata, timestamps, IPs, audit trails. If they were going to play this game, I was going to bring my own dice and mark the sides. 15 minutes later, the first email hit. Subject, follow up on our discussion Q4 alignment. From Brent to me. CC, HR Director Monica, CFO Charles Body. Thanks for syncing earlier. Let's make sure we're all aligned as we head into our final metrics consolidation. Please prioritize morale-sensitive feedback. Appreciate your partnership. Morale-sensitive feedback, that's not even corporate speak. That's a toddler with a whiteboard and a caffeine problem. I didn't respond. Just flagged it, downloaded a PDF copy, forwarded it to my private legal folder. One of many I'd started compiling back when Monica made a joke during a diversity training about reverse discrimination and thought it was hilarious. The office was quiet when I left. Too quiet. The kind of silence that settles in when everyone's pretending not to notice something foul in the fridge. I passed Brenda in payroll, who was stapling forms like her life depended on it. We locked eyes briefly, gave me a slow head shake. She'd seen it too, felt the shift. At home, I opened my laptop, poured a glass of wine, and started organizing. The whistleblower packet wasn't ready yet, but it was coming together, like a slow storm forming on a humid day. I wasn't planning to use it, not yet. I still had a sliver of belief this might all blow over. That maybe Brent was just another blowhard who'd flame out in 6 months after alienating enough of the board. But in my gut, something told me this wasn't going to blow over. It was going to detonate. The calendar invite landed in my inbox like a turd in a punch bowl. No subject line, just check-in with HR. Friday, 4:30 p.m., 15 minutes before end of day, 15 minutes before the weekend. That's corporate code for ambush with a smile. I showed up in conference room B, same airless crypt they used for layoff roulette. Found Monica from HR already seated, legal pad in hand, fake empathy smeared across her face like foundation that didn't match her neck. Next to her was a woman I didn't recognize, all beige cardigan and tight jaw. I later learned she was the culture liaison. Apparently, we needed one now. I guess when you outsource your ethics, someone's gotta handle the receipts. Thanks for making time on such short notice, Monica chirped, as if I had a damn choice. What's this about? I asked, sitting down and refusing the offer of a room temp La Croix. I don't take consolation bubbles from people who are about to screw me. She shuffled some papers. We've received a few concerns from colleagues about your tone in meetings. Comments about resistance to leadership direction. There's a pattern of uncooperative behavior we wanted to talk through. My jaw tensed. From who? She smiled like a mall Santa smelling gin. Don't disclose sources, Karen. This is just a conversation. Right. A conversation that starts with vague accusations, ends with a written record, and gets dropped into your personnel file like a lit match in a dry field. I looked at the other woman. She gave a tight nod, like she was agreeing to nothing, but still tallying my reaction. I've seen hostage videos with more compassion. I've never refused leadership direction, I said evenly, unless you mean Brent's request to optimize data by deleting employee feedback. Monica blinked like a broken cursor. Well, it's important to stay flexible in how we approach metrics. Language matters, and I'm being reprimanded for using what language exactly? It's not about any specific word, it's more the tone. You've been described as resistant, sometimes combative, not a team player. There it was, the dagger with no fingerprints. I'd seen it happen to others, men mostly, usually over 40. Speak too plainly and you're abrasive. Set a boundary and you're difficult. Have standards, you're not a cultural fit. I didn't speak, just nodded once, slow. My heart pounded, but my face didn't flinch. Years of corporate microaggressions had taught me how to go stone still while being gutted. Monica slid a printed memo across the table. This is just a reminder of our internal policies. Disciplinary procedures, escalation frameworks, and as of this quarter, on-camera documentation for morale impact incidents. Morale impact incidents? I repeated, voice flat. Just a new framework, she said, waving a manicured hand. We're working to ensure transparency. All corrective actions will be accompanied by video for internal review. Nothing public, just protocol. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just a warning, it was set-up theater. A script was being written. I was the villain in their little HR drama. I took the memo, folded it, slid it into my notebook like it was a love letter from the apocalypse. I stood. If we're done, I'd like to review these policies with counsel. Monica blinked again. Of course. This is just a check-in. I walked out of that room and straight to my desk. Grabbed my personal files, photos, tax docs, notes I didn't want crawling through the legal jungle if IT got involved. I plugged in a flash drive and started backing up my Outlook archives. A message popped up from Brent. Subject, appreciate your adaptability body. Heard you had a productive convo with HR. Looking forward to smoother alignment next week. Cheers. I didn't respond, just saved it, PDF'd it, forwarded it to my private archive like a good little archivist of corporate decay. My stomach burned, not fear, not quite rage. Something worse, betrayal with a side of insult. After 12 years of building that department, after mentoring interns who now ran divisions, after staying late to debug systems the CTO didn't understand, I was being framed as the problem. I looked around the office. The open floor plan buzzed with forced normalcy. No one made eye contact. People smelled it, the blood in the water, and Brent. He was across the floor, laughing with sales, probably telling them how he handled the data lady. I went home that night and started organizing again. Not just files this time, a story, a timeline, because I knew what was coming next. They wanted a performance. I'd give them one, and I'd make damn sure the camera saw everything. Friday, 3:55 p.m. The kind of hour where people pretend to type with purpose while secretly checking DoorDash for weekend hangover cures. Office smelled like stress sweat, printer ink, and sugar-free desperation. I was in the middle of reviewing org chart anomalies when Monica from HR showed up at my cubicle unannounced, clutching a manila folder like it was her firstborn. She didn't smile, just nodded toward conference room F like we were old war buddies, and this was the final foxhole. No subject line this time, no email thread, just 3 words as she passed, "We're ready now." I followed, not because I trusted it, but because I needed it on record. Inside the room, the overhead fluorescents buzzed with the cold enthusiasm of a morgue. A ring light was already set up, and a Lexbridge-branded webcam perched atop a sad little tripod aimed at the center chair. The CFO, Charles, stood in the corner like a substitute executioner, arms folded, eyes narrowed, face unreadable behind the faint reflection of his bifocals. He didn't say a word, just nodded once when I entered, like he'd been briefed on how this was supposed to go. Monica gestured to the seat. "This won't take long." She handed me a printed script. A single paragraph, typed in Arial, double-spaced like it was afraid of itself. I acknowledge that my recent conduct has negatively impacted team morale, accept disciplinary action as outlined under company policy, and commit to demonstrating better alignment with Lexbridge values moving forward. I held it for a moment. My hands didn't shake. They wanted to break me on camera. That was the point. Not the words themselves, but the act of saying them. They tried isolating me, discrediting me, gaslighting me in pastel tones. Now they wanted the performance. My compliance, immortalized in HD, suitable for legal coverage and future PowerPoints on accountability. I looked at the script, then at Monica, then at Charles. He met my gaze just long enough to confirm what I already knew. This wasn't HR. This was asset control. Camera rolling, Monica announced, tapping her phone screen. I sat down, smoothed my blazer, took one breath and read the words. Not loudly, not meekly. Just flat. Like reading an obituary you didn't write but had to deliver. Acknowledge that my recent conduct has negatively impacted team morale. I accept disciplinary action as outlined under company policy and commit to demonstrating better alignment with Lexbridge values moving forward. Silence. Monica tapped again. Perfect, thank you. We'll document this internally. Charles gave the faintest nod, then walked out like someone who had just witnessed a dog being put down and didn't want the guilt sticking to his shoes. I stayed seated because they thought that was the end. They thought the footage was the trophy, that I'd slink back to my desk, lick my wounds, and maybe resign quietly in a few weeks like the last 3 women they chewed through and discarded under the same sterile lighting. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened my calendar app, tapped into next Tuesday, 9:00 a.m. Title: Employee Grievance Review, Time-Sensitive Location. Conference Room of Guests, Lexbridge External Counsel. Compliance Liaison, Client Oversight Representative, DCSA Contract Attachments. Packet 1. PDF Packet 2. Zip Notes, see attached re. Data Integrity Concerns, Retaliatory Practices, SEC Reportable Activity. I hit send. The invite landed like a precision strike. No subjectivity, no rage. Just the facts, time-stamped, labeled, legally phrased, and formatted for discovery. They'd wanted a video? Great. Now I had one too. I walked out of conference room F and passed Brent on the way to the break room. He was laughing again with his signature cup of mushroom adaptogen latte. He gave me a mock salute. All good, Karen? I smiled, all good. He had no idea the bomb had already been dropped. By the time it went off, he'd be choking on that latte, and I'd be sitting in the front row. Clipboard in hand, evidence locked, receipts ready, game on. Thing about being underestimated for a decade is you learn how to weaponize it. They thought I was just another tired mid-level relic, too loyal or too worn down to fight back. A lifer. The kind of employee who keeps the lights on but doesn't know where the switches are. But Lexbridge had taught me well, taught me how systems work, how digital trails are made, how every single action leaves a breadcrumb if you know where to look. And I always knew where to look. Flash drive I kept in my desk drawer, inside a hollowed-out copy of the Lean Startup, no less, wasn't decorative. It was a graveyard. A graveyard of quietly collected red flags, doctored dashboards, Slack transcripts, deleted survey entries that weren't really deleted, backend logs showing admin overrides tied to Brent's user ID. I wasn't paranoid. I was observant, and Lexbridge gave me more than a decade to sharpen that edge. Let's rewind for a minute. First day Brent walked in with that oily people-first grin. He pulled me into a meeting and asked if we could clean the optics on Q3's engagement trends. Just fluff out the negatives, he said, so we're not stuck explaining to the board why folks think working here is the corporate version of waterboarding. I told him no, of course, but I didn't stop at no. I logged the request. I saved the invite. I screen-capped his follow-up with that exact phrasing. I started documenting. I created a private email account tied to no personal identifiers. I uploaded each document with date stamps and version history. I used screen recordings, screen caps, even voice memos when Brent cornered me in hallways to drop his verbal suggestions. I ran SQL polls on engagement logs every week and exported diffs. When numbers changed without justification, I tracked the IPs. I didn't need to guess who made the edits. The audit trail sang like a choir on fire. Meanwhile, I consulted with a lawyer. A good one, friend of a friend, third-generation employment attorney who worked out of a converted dry cleaners in Akron. He looked at my first packet of evidence and said, deadpan, they're gonna wish they just fired you. He explained something I hadn't even considered. If Brent's manipulation of engagement scores was tied to performance-based executive bonuses, and those bonuses were tied to stock performance or quarterly financial projections, we weren't just talking HR violations. We were talking securities fraud. Clause 10b-5 of the Securities Exchange Act. Any act or omission resulting in fraud or deceit in connection with the purchase or sale of any security. Translation: if they used fake engagement data to justify stock buybacks or earnings reports and retaliated against me for flagging it, they weren't just shady. They were criminally liable. I didn't flinch. I just added the clause to my notebook in thick red pen. Sec 10b-5, material misrepresentation, to investors from that moment on. Every meeting, every whisper, every idiotic CC from Brent got saved twice. Once in the cloud, once on a cold drive locked in my glove compartment under a pair of fuzzy dice from my college car. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest work friends. This wasn't water cooler drama, this was war. And when HR finally marched me into that room to record their little hostage tape, I didn't panic. I executed. That calendar invite I sent after reading their shame script, it wasn't just a cry for help. It was a tripwire. Recipients were chosen with surgical precision. Lexbridge's external legal counsel, because they'd need plausible deniability. The board's compliance liaison, a retired SEC auditor with zero tolerance for ambiguity. The lead client rep from our largest contract, a Department of Defense subcontract that requires strict data integrity protocols as part of their vendor compliance agreement. See, if they had just tried to humiliate me, might have walked away. But Brent wanted me dirty. He wanted my silence on tape. He wanted to use my own face as a shield. And now I had enough evidence to light that shield on fire and make sure it happened in front of the people who mattered. The countdown had started the moment I clicked send. I closed my laptop that evening and sat back, staring at the ceiling, feeling nothing but the slow, methodical hum of a woman who's finally in control. Wanted submission. Instead, they got an indictment in Google Calendar form. The weekend passed like a loaded gun under glass. Nothing happened, but the weight was everywhere. No emails, no calls, no Brent galloping in with a fresh synergy initiative. Just silence. A cold, corporate kind of silence. The kind where everyone knows something's brewing, but nobody's brave enough to sniff the air. Even Slack, usually buzzing with pointless emoji wars and weekend wins, is dead. Just one status bubble flashing offline after another, like rats abandoning a Slack-shaped ship. I kept my notifications on anyway. Let the quiet stretch. Let them stew in it. Monday came. Lexbridge's glass building caught the sunrise like a crime scene, polished, expensive, and utterly oblivious. The parking lot was still half empty when I walked in with my leather folio tucked under one arm and a single black coffee in my hand. No almond milk, no optimism, just straight caffeine and consequences. The front desk kid, Carly, intern-turned-gatekeeper, glanced up and tried to offer her usual happy Monday. But it caught in her throat. I nodded back, silent. Even she felt it. The temperature shift, like the air was thicker than usual. I took the stairs to avoid small talk. Conference room was already unlocked. I opened the door, flipped on the lights, and placed the folder, thick, labeled Q4 data anomalies internal use only, dead center on the table. Then I sat in the corner seat, the one with a perfect view of the doorway. Notepad open, pen ready, hands still. 9:00 a.m. on the dot, the door opened. First came Geraldine, the compliance liaison. 60, steel-haired, looked like she ironed her spine every morning. No hellos, just a nod. She spotted the folder immediately, pulled a chair out, sat like a judge preparing for sentencing. Then came Miguel from external counsel, still adjusting his tie and looking like he hadn't slept since the market crash. He muttered something about traffic, but went quiet the second he saw Geraldine already present. And then came Randall, the contract liaison from our largest client, federal subcontractor. military-grade procurement, kind of account that audits our data, logs every quarter with the enthusiasm of a taxidermist. He looked pale, sweaty, not a man used to surprise meetings. The door shut. Still no Brent, no Monica, no Charles, no CEO. Interesting. Geraldine broke the silence first. You called this, I nodded, correct. Miguel opened the folder. He didn't flip through casually, he scanned. Each page was tagged, time-stamped, annotated. Side-by-sides of original VS, altered engagement reports, Slack transcripts of Brent's cleanup requests, email headers showing deleted survey results reappearing under scrubbed metadata, and most damning of all, the quarterly earnings deck with the engagement data directly cited, used to justify C-level bonuses and investor language. All printed, all documented, all labeled for forensic clarity. Miguel's face drained. Geraldine tapped a note on the top sheet with her red pen, asserting this data was manipulated post-collection, without employee consent, and then used in externally reportable material. I'm not asserting, I'm showing. Randall shifted in his seat, and this data appeared in the dashboard we received during our December audit. I turned the page for him, showed the before and after. Yes, your compliance checklist was run against falsified data. He blinked, slowly, then whispered, Christ. 9:14 a.m. Door swung open again, and there he was, CEO Daniel Godwin. Beige suit, red face, breath shallow. He scanned the room, zeroed in on the faces, then spotted me. His eyes went to the folder, to Geraldine, to Randall, then to Miguel, who was already adjusting his glasses and muttering something under his breath about liability tiers. Daniel didn't sit, just stood there, one hand still on the doorknob, like he was ready to bolt. What is this? He finally asked. Miguel didn't look up. It's real. Geraldine didn't blink. You have a problem. Randall leaned forward, and unless this gets fixed, you're going to lose a contract with the United States government. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, only a flicker of panic across his brow as he realized this wasn't a meeting. This was a reckoning. I didn't say a word, didn't raise my voice, didn't even smirk. I just sat there, calm as a librarian in a thunderstorm. The walls started to groan. They'd wanted me silenced. Instead, they gave me a microphone and locked the door behind themselves. The CEO stared at the printed guest list like it had bitten him. He didn't speak at first, just blinked, looked from name to name, then back at me as if I'd conjured them all from a pentagram drawn in HR paperwork. External counsel. Compliance liaison. Lead client rep from a federally monitored defense contract. This wasn't a calendar invite. It was a loaded gun left on the table. Karen, he began, voice brittle. Was this necessary? Before I could respond, Monica burst in. Late, breathless. No clipboard, no notes, just damage control in motion. I'm so sorry, no one told me this was happening. I thought this was just. She paused when she spotted the folder. The thick one. The one labeled in bold red ink. Her eyes scanned the room like a raccoon caught in LED headlights. She was just venting, she said quickly, eyes landing on Daniel. This was just a misunderstanding. We talked to her Friday. Everything's been addressed. Geraldine raised a single eyebrow, slow and surgical. Venting? She asked. Miguel flipped open the folder. Let's start here. He laid out a copy of the quarterly earnings report on the table, then placed a screenshot of the internal dashboard beside it. Engagement metrics show a 92% satisfaction rate across all departments. Except that's not what the original data said. He turned to a page from the export logs. Time-stamped entries. Brent's override credentials. Admin changes logged at midnight. Deleted detractors. Artificial boosts in departments flagged for burnout. Each alteration matched precisely with bonus calculation windows. Geraldine snapped on a pair of reading glasses and pulled out a red pen. Monica looked ready to vomit. Daniel tried again. There must be a context. This couldn't have happened without. Miguel slid over another page. The Slack transcript. Brent's message, hey Karen, can we clean the optics here? No need to burden the board with mood swings. Let's round up a bit. Delete the noise. Monica's reply beneath it, all good. I'll coordinate with you on phrasing. Need green across the board. Geraldine underlined it. Would you define this as standard HR practice? She asked. Monica swallowed. Her mascara looked like it was considering an exit strategy. I didn't think she'd escalate it, she said, turning to me. You never said anything. You just went straight for the kill. I met her gaze. Calm, focused. I followed procedure. I filed the grievance. You buried it. And I reached into my folio and pulled out the final exhibit. a printed copy of the disciplinary statement they made me read on camera. But mine had notes in the margins, black ink, line by line, noting every internal policy breach, every clause of retaliation under federal employment law, every instance where forcing an employee to record a coerced statement under disciplinary threat without representation violated both internal guidelines and external compliance protocols. Geraldine took it gently, scanned it, and nodded. This will be entered into record. Randall, the client rep, leaned back in his chair. We're suspending all data access effective immediately. A formal audit will begin today. If this report holds up, contract with Lexbridge is in breach. Daniel tried to cut in again, but Miguel raised a hand. You should stop talking now. The silence was volcanic. It wasn't rage that filled the room, it was shame. Slow, suffocating. The realization that no one had pulled the fire alarm because they never thought I would have the matches. That I'd been invisible so long they assumed I was harmless. They forgot that a data analyst sees everything. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, even lean back. I just sat still while the air filled with static and self-destruction. They hadn't just screwed up, they documented it, and I had brought the receipts. By Wednesday, Brent's name vanished from Slack like it had been exorcised. No goodbye post, no moving on to new adventures gif, just gone. His profile picture, one of those too tight jawline selfies taken in golden hour lighting, was replaced with a blank silhouette like he'd never existed. An internal memo went out that afternoon. Short, neutered, legal proofed. Effective immediately, Brent R. has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal compliance review. No one needed the rest of the sentence. The entire company was already whispering it behind screen-shielded DMs and bathroom stall doors. The golden boy was radioactive. Monica, on the other hand, didn't even wait for the formal memo. She ghosted, vanished like a spilled secret. Office was empty by Thursday morning, save for Dusty World's #1 HR hero. Mug someone quietly turned face down. The fallout was fast. Clinical, surgical. By Friday, Lexbridge's largest client, Randall's firm, formally suspended all vendor contracts pending a full audit. The kind of contract that made up 23% of our Q1 revenue projections. Finance went into a tailspin. CFO started barking into conference calls like he was trying to revive a dying stock price with sheer vocal volume. The board demanded an emergency review, and that's when the offer came. An envelope on my desk, thick, cream-colored, sealed with the corporate logo like a wedding invitation. Inside, a settlement, 6-month severance, health insurance continuation, and of course, an NDA the length of a novella. I read it once, read it again, folded it in half, and placed it in my drawer next to the coffee-stained stress ball that Brent once gave out during his culture reboot campaign. I didn't sign it. Instead, I walked into the board liaison's office and handed over everything. 2 flash drives, 1 physical binder, full timeline, annotated evidence. Every whisper, every nudge, every misstep documented with the cold precision of someone who had learned to count her scars by quarter. I didn't ask for promotion or a bonus or even a thank you. I just said, clean it up, for real this time. They didn't argue, because by now they knew I was the only one who hadn't lied. Still, power doesn't come back clean. The halls felt different after that. People glanced up when I passed, some with respect, some with fear, as if I might subpoena their Slack threads just for fun. Others avoided me altogether. Survivors don't make people comfortable. Remind them the building almost burned. But I didn't care about their unease. I cared about the next move, because real change doesn't come from a revenge email or a LinkedIn post. It comes when the machine has to reckon with someone who knows where the gears actually turn. That weekend, I got a new email thread in my inbox. Subject, urgent. External counsel requests full access logs body. Please provide archived engagement data, raw survey files, dashboard edit logs, and any API call histories from Q3 onward. Time-stamped and unfiltered. The investigation was real now. No more optics, no more buzzwords, just truth, cold and sharp. I replied with the access credentials. Then I sat back and watched as the machine I once oiled with my own exhaustion began eating its own tail. Vindication isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the absence of fear. The emergency board meeting began at 8:00 a.m. sharp. Daniel, the CEO, showed up late, shirt untucked, eyes bloodshot, tie hanging like a noose he'd lost the nerve to tighten. He paused in the doorway, scanned the table, and when his gaze landed on me, seated at the far end, flanked by counsel and compliance, His voice came out in a whisper, hollow and hoarse. Please tell me she wasn't serious. Geraldine didn't blink. She was. Miguel, the external counsel, already flipping through a folder of internal documentation, stamped with the kind of language that made auditors salivate and CEOs soil themselves. Material misrepresentation, contract breach, retaliatory action, evidence chain preserved. Daniel sank into his chair like the air had given up holding him. There has to be some explanation, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. This can't all be true. Miguel pushed his glasses up his nose. Every claim, every timestamp, every data point, it's all backed up. She didn't just catch the fraud, she built the blueprint of it. Someone on the board, Janice, I think, shuffled in her seat. How long has she been gathering this? Geraldine answered, since the first alteration request, possibly earlier. Daniel tried to pivot, but she recorded the disciplinary video. She agreed. She accepted it. Finally, I spoke. Calm, controlled. I read what you wrote, word for word. Reached into my folio and pulled out a single envelope, sleek, unmarked, sealed with a paperclip. I slid it across the table without flair or commentary. Miguel picked it up, read the contents, and let out a slow, audible breath. My resignation, I said simply. Effective immediately. Daniel sat up. Karen, wait, we can fix this. We can find a role that fits better. Something in compliance, maybe. I held up a hand. Just one, and the room stopped. No, he said, you don't get to reposition me in the ruins of your failure. Silence, thick, heavy. The kind of silence that follows the final line of a courtroom verdict. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and before I walked out, I left them with one last gift. I already accepted your discipline, I said, voice steady, cold as glass. Now it's your turn. No dramatics. No mic drop. Just the truth left on their table like a lit match beside a leaking gas line. As I stepped into the hallway, I passed Brent's old office, now dark, door ajar, nameplate already pried off. Down the corridor, Monica's desk was bare, her stupid bobblehead wobbling aimlessly in the air conditioning. I didn't look back, because I didn't need to burn the building. I just rewired the fire alarm, and they finally heard it scream. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.